with that, something we saw right before we took our hiatus here on Variant, the Rise of Skywalker.
Rise of Skywalker. And in the same week, it was the Rise of Skywalker and the conclusion of The Mandalorian. Two very different things, very different events. And I'm going to say right off the bat, I don't know about you, I'm not going to say very much about the Rise of Skywalker for the reason of I don't have a ton of positive things to add to the conversation.
So what you're telling everyone is you didn't really like it that much.
I have a lot of issues with it. There were things I liked, and there was a lot I didn't like. But I will say this, the things I didn't like have more to do with the trilogy as a whole.
Oh, I 100%
and
agree with
how
that.
this capped off the trilogy as a whole just kind of closed off that loop.
Okay.
So it's a lot more about the trilogy as a whole than it is about the individual movie. The individual movie, in my opinion, it was fun at times. At times, it was slow and a bit choppy. But, it was fun at times, had some very cool scenes. It was very pretty to look at.
For sure.
It had some fun elements to it. It had some redeeming qualities. They clearly tried to put in there to redeem some things from The Last Jedi that people, OG Star Wars fans were unhappy with. They tried to do that in some areas. My opinion, I think it was a ship that sailed.
Right.
And I just don't think that it was anything they were able to bounce back. Now we're hearing all of this rumors about all this cut footage and these cut scenes that made it a different movie or had more
Have you seen release the Abrams cut?
Yeah,
that's a new thing. It seems like,
and if that starts, so help me,
it's the 2020 version of the Snyder cut.
Oh my God! But I will say though, if there is an extended cut that gives more, Disney will release it. In my opinion, Disney, I think is. It's a totally different situation too.
Right.
It's not the same as what happened with the Justice League.
No.
So I think that if that is the fact, that when they release it on Blu-ray, we'll get the extended director's cut of the film with more scenes and stuff, and that they'll use that to sell. Because the other thing too is that the numbers for this film, while they've been high and it's made a lot of money, I think it's almost $900 million now or something like that.
But it's not as much. I think it's still less
but
than The Last Jedi.
But it's way behind even The Last Jedi, which was way behind The Force Awakens. So each film has taken a large drop.
Which is kind of shocking to me because I even told you, I thought purely because it's the end of all 9 films, the end of this trilogy, the end of the Skywalker saga, I thought based on that alone, love it or hate it, you have to see it one way or another. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
but
that's a little shocking to me as far as box office numbers.
Well, one, I think it's the power of the people that said, we don't like what Disney's doing with Star Wars, and so we're going to prove it at the box office. We're going to show it at the box office. I don't fall into that camp. You know that. We've talked about that extensively. You don't either. It's like, look, it's different. We might not like all the things they did, but, hey, it's just it's a movie. It'll change. They're going to do stuff different. But I think the other thing too is as far as like that whole thing, like we talked about in previous podcasts of the conclusion of the Skywalker saga, I think a lot of people like me, we don't see it as that. We see the conclusion of the Skywalker saga as the Return of the Jedi, because what they did with this trilogy, it really isn't. And I'm going to say right now too, spoiler. We're going to talk a little bit of spoilers about...
I mean, this movie's been out for almost a month at this point.
Just,
so.
It's been out, but, I'll say we're going to say a couple of spoilers for both this and like The Mandalorian and a couple of other things. So, we'll tell you anything else, but spoilers for Mandalorian and The Rise of Skywalker. But for The Rise of Skywalker, like the big thing for me, and this is the only negative thing that I'll really point out specifically, is how they clickbaited the entire audience with the title of The Rise of Skywalker. And at the end, that just winds up to be Rey.
Right.
Just taking the name. She's a Palpatine, and we find out she's a Palpatine, and she takes the name Skywalker at the end in the very last minute as if to say like, I'm Michael Jordan too.
Right.
And that whole spiel. And it was like that particular thing or dislike it, whatever. I personally thought it was just kind of like, what? Why? I personally, that wasn't my thing. But the big thing was you made the title of the film The Rise of Skywalker and then sold it as the conclusion to the Skywalker saga. And then that was the Skywalker part.
Yeah,
that was the most catfish, clickbaity thing they could have done, and it was just like it made it just fall really flat for me.
Yeah, I'm of two worlds with that thing. Like, for sure, catfish 100%. But I'm like in the middle where I'm like, I see what they're trying to do. Like, like anyone could be of great importance or power. So, but then the nerd in me is still like, yeah, but like agrees with you, or I'm like, but that's like a cop out.
No,
but that goes back again. That's not my thing with the movie. It's the trilogy. I said it in my spoiler-free review that went up like 2 weeks ago now or whatever. But my problem isn't with this movie per se, because if you were just gonna ask me about this movie, I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. That's just it was okay movie. You know what I mean? Like, for me, if I rate this trilogy from favorite to least favorite, would be Force Awakens, Rise of Skywalker, and The Last Jedi. But it's just the lack of the legacy characters or the importance they put on them towards the end. You know what I mean? Like, they killed all of them off.
Right. In very dismissive fashion.
Yeah, it's like, I don't have a problem with that. One of my, Game of Thrones, one of my favorite shows of all time, is like they were killing characters off, important characters off like every other episode. So that's not a problem I have. It's just, I feel like, because again, this is what I said in my review. So Skywalker, Luke, Han, all these characters, they're not only from the 6 movies. They're from the comics. They're from like all the cartoons. So they have this rich history.
Right.
We know them many forms of media, video games, cartoons, comics, the movies, all that stuff. And then you bring these new characters that no one's ever seen before and try to make them like the most important part of the saga. Or not the most important part, but like, this is the new, you know what I mean? If you're going to end the Skywalker saga, why not end it with
a bang?
The bang and the Skywalkers.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I feel like putting these new characters in the Skywalker saga was just a way to be like, oh, you remember this is Skywalker saga. Everyone's going to see it this way. Like, if they were to do a new trilogy with these characters, they know not as many people would be as interested. So that is kind of my problem, where I feel like it's happening a lot with a lot of franchises, where they're taking these existing properties and putting new characters in it just because they know that people will see it no matter what, because it's an established property already.
Right.
So I don't know why you just wouldn't have done a new trilogy, because to me it felt like this was very forced into the Skywalker thing.
Right.
Saga, because like you said, Return of the Jedi is very much that's it.
Right.
But you still could have continued it, but they did a disservice to Luke, I would say even Han, and then they changed.
I thought they treated Leia fairly.
Leia
obviously was given the
and
spotlight.
she lasted the longest too.
And then Carrie Fisher passed away, unfortunately, and so she wasn't able to be given. But even with her death, I think that Leia, they gave her a serviceable end.
And Chewbacca apparently too. Chewbacca.
Yeah, Chewbacca was the last man standing.
He lasted all the way till the end. I think the whole Luke thing and Palpatine thing, I think, are the two biggest things where I was like, because I know a lot of people were saying that it would have been too predictable. Like, you have the half saying it would have been too predictable if Luke saved the day and you saw him all powerful. But I think that me and a lot of fans, we wanted to see that. We never saw that.
Right.
Much like we never seen Vader like completely in his prime.
Right.
We've never seen Luke completely in his like prime. And I would love to have seen him like wreck shit, kind of like at the end of The Last Jedi, except like for real and not just like, a projection or hologram of himself.
Right.
So,
and I think that's the part that bums Star Wars fans out, is that with the conclusion of this trilogy, you kind of left feeling like we're never going to get that, at least not with Luke Skywalker. I think we will eventually get it with Darth Vader.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. But he's too profitable of a character, I think. But with Luke Skywalker, how do you recast Luke Skywalker? Especially after the failure of Solo, right?
Yeah.
The film. So it's like, again, like going back to this movie.
You don't use the Irishman technology with the de-aging process.
Maybe if it gets good enough, they might, but it won't be for a long, long while.
Right.
But, again, like you were saying, it's really the trilogy as a whole. And it goes back to something that we've talked about many times, which is that when you set out on a story, I don't care if it's a comic book, a film, a television series, particularly if you're going to go off on a film series like a trilogy, you have to know the end. You have to know where that story is going. You got to know where you're starting, you got to know your middle, and you need to know your end. But specifically, you need to know where it ends, right? And this movie just really highlighted the fact that they set out on this trilogy and they really didn't have a course. They didn't know where this was all going. And the saddest part for me, and this is kind of rung true in recent kind of resurrections of franchises, is where Hollywood kind of feel, they take this approach of to do something new and to move something into a franchise or a particular cast of characters into a new generation, we have to undo the previous stories.
Right.
We have to get rid of or dismiss the previous beloved characters or storylines and somehow retcon them. And I just don't agree with that approach. I think that's short-sighted because you can have both.
For sure.
And in Star Wars and with this trilogy, I feel like the missed opportunity was that they could have done both. And particularly Rian Johnson. Again, this is just my opinion. There was a lot of people that loved The Last Jedi. I saw a lot of people out in force that were angry about the Rise of Skywalker because they were saying that the Rise of the Last Jedi was so good and Rian Johnson set it on a brand new course, and J.J. Abrams undid all that. And that's one side of the coin, but you have the other side of the coin, which is that people didn't like the people that didn't like what Rian Johnson did. They didn't like how he, the whole laser sword routine, where it was just this, like the line that he put in the script with Kylo Ren, where he said, get rid of the past, kill it if you have to.
Right.
And that was kind of the approach. That was him saying his approach to Star Wars, as he was trying to kill Star Wars past and start something brand new, which is fine. But again, I just don't follow the approach of you have to, retcon the previous stories in some way or treat it so, flippantly or dismissively to be able to move forward. They could have done both. They could have given the legacy characters a big out, a big go, have them go out with a bang, wrap up the Skywalker saga in a way that left them like, in a really exciting way, but also introduce something brand new.
I think that does a disservice. I think that was one of my big problems with the trilogy as a whole too. It does a disservice to all those characters 100%. That we grew up with. It's
if you
like,
think,
why are you trying to continue this saga if you're gonna not, put these characters at the forefront or continue their legacy? You're basically just trying to end it. It's like, why to me? But I told you before, I'm also kind of like burnt out on this whole new trilogy thing because I feel like everyone's been beating it and we've been talking about it a lot because we've been doing so much Star Wars stuff towards the end of the year. But like, I'm just glad this trilogy's over.
I think that's kind of the sentiment of a lot of people.
Love it or hate it,
and that's kind of where I'm at. That's why I say I don't want to say too much negative. Because, like I said, there were fun moments of the film. It was a Star Wars movie. It was very pretty to look at. There was fun moments. But in the end, it was just kind of like a reminder of some missed opportunities, I thought, to close out the Skywalker saga. But with that said, I think now it's just got to be like about the future of Star Wars. And The Mandalorian
is definitely the future of Star Wars.
And things that we're hearing coming about the Obi-Wan series. With now that they're talking about they're casting a young Luke Skywalker for the series. You couple that with what we've seen from The Mandalorian, and I think the future of Star Wars still looks really good. I think that we're going to, The Mandalorian is already giving us some great stuff.
The future of Star Wars is TV, it seems. You got Clone Wars
for now.
season 7, and then Obi-Wan season 2 for Mandalorian, and then there's a third mystery one apparently that's
we don't know what that's going to be.
Yeah, probably Ahsoka is what I'm rooting for. Hopefully, I think that would be dope.
We're hearing there's rumors of Ahsoka, there's rumors of Dr. Aphra.
That could be cool.
Any of those could be cool.
I want to see a white and yellow lightsaber.
My expectation is that it is going to be something that's from the newer storylines.
It would make sense to do it that way, just because they've been doing a lot of older stuff.
Yeah.
So plus, again, I think Ahsoka would be super dope because we've only seen her in animated form. Yeah. So seeing her live action,
you did hear her voice at the end of The Rise of Skywalker,
which that scene was really. There was a lot of cool scenes. Again, I didn't hate the movie. It's just
no, neither
overall.
did I.
But Ahsoka, because she has, first of all, like she was raised and trained with like Anakin, so you get all that. You get some probably Vader stuff in there, depending what period of her life they chose to go.
Yeah.
That could be really cool. And she's just like a badass in general. She has like, the normal size lightsaber and then like a shorter one. And her fighting style is really cool. So I have her poster in my office. So I'm kind of hoping for that.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that's what it is. Dr. Aphra is a cool character, but Team Ahsoka.
I think a lot of people agree with you. I would agree with you. I think a lot of people are pulling for an Ahsoka series. She's a fan loved character. She's a fan favorite for sure.
For sure. And Disney Plus has, thus far, the 2 ones they've announced have been male leads. So I feel like they are going to want to mix it up and probably do a female lead. And I think that's the perfect one to go after.
I would agree.